When Jesus stayed silent, the words that thundered louder than any voice ever could. The town of Mercy's Hollow was a place where faith was both shield and sword. Pastor James had led the flock for 20 years, his sermons on love and forgiveness echoing through the wooden pews of the old church. Karen, the florist whose shop bloomed with color on Main Street, was his most devoted follower. Her hands, calloused from arranging roses, always held a Bible. Elias, the town's prodigal son, had returned after a decade, his leather jacket and guarded eyes stirring whispers. The three were bound by faith, but a single accusation would shatter their world. It began with a rumor. Karen, ever vigilant, overheard Elias muttering about Pastor James during a late-night delivery. "He's not what he seems," Elias had said, his voice low and bitter. Karen's heart raced. She confronted Pastor James, expecting denial, but his silence chilled her. That Sunday, she stood in church, her voice trembling as she accused him of hypocrisy before the congregation. "If you're innocent, why won't you speak?" she demanded. The pastor's eyes met hers, heavy with something unspoken, but he said nothing. The town split. Half believed Karen, their trust in James crumbling. The other half rallied behind him, calling her a zealot. Elias watched from the sidelines, his silence as loud as the pastor's. Tensions boiled until a public meeting was called in the town square. Karen, fueled by righteous fury, demanded answers. "You've preached truth but live a lie," she shouted, her finger jabbing at James. The pastor stood still, clutching his Bible, his face etched with pain. Elias stepped forward, his jaw tight. "You're wrong, Karen," he said, his voice cracking. "It's not what you think." Then came the twist. A frail woman, Miss Clara, the church's organist, pushed through the crowd. Her hands shook as she held a letter, yellowed with age. "This is why he's silent," she whispered, handing it to Elias. The crowd fell silent as he read aloud. The letter was from Elias's mother, written before she died in prison years ago. It revealed Pastor James had taken the blame for her crime-stealing church funds to spare her children's future. He'd vowed never to speak of it, even as the town judged him. Elias's eyes filled with tears. "He saved us," he said, turning to James. "Why didn't you tell me?" Karen staggered back, her world unraveling. She had seen a liar where a savior stood. Her crusade, born of love for her faith, had torn apart the man who embodied it. The crowd murmured, some weeping, others angry. Pastor James finally spoke, his voice soft but steady. "I stayed silent because love doesn't demand vindication. It bears all things." He looked at Karen, not with anger, but with sorrow. "Even this." The confrontation peaked as Karen fell to her knees, sobbing. "Forgive me," she begged. But James only shook his head. "It's not mine to give," he said, walking away. Elias followed, leaving Karen alone in the square, the weight of her mistake crushing her. The townsfolk dispersed, their whispers now of guilt and grace. Miss Clara lingered, her eyes kind but firm. "Truth cuts deeper than lies," she said, before turning away. Days later, Pastor James left Mercy's Hollow. His final sermon was simple. When Jesus stayed silent before Pilate, his love spoke loudest. Karen closed her shop, unable to face the roses that mocked her zeal. Elias stayed, rebuilding his life, but the town was never the same. The church service that Sunday was silent, no hymns. No words, just a space where for broken hearts to sit together. The story of Mercy's Hollow spread, a tale of faith tested and found wanting. Karen's passion, once a beacon, became a warning. Pastor James's silence, once a mystery, became a sermon louder than any voice. And Elias, the outsider, carried the truth that could have spared them all, if only he'd spoken sooner. The bitter end was this: love and truth demand sacrifice, but human hearts are slow to learn. What do you think? Was Karen's zeal justified? Or was Pastor James's silence a betrayal of justice? Share your thoughts on where truth and judgment collide in a community like this.